Capital punishment is killing someone legally as a punishment for a serious crime he or she has committed. There are various reasons why a punishment could lead to capital punishment, such as murder, treason, genocide, death, crimes against humanity. The term capital punishment comes from the Latin word capitilis, which means regarding the head and beheading the head. This punishment is only legal in 32 states and has been around since the 18th century. There has been 1,427 executions in the United States using the lethal injection. It is legal by the government and the U.S. military and is finalized by a trial. There are different reasons why some states have capital punishment and some reasons why not. A lot of states believe it's inhumane. There are arguments that the capital punishment deters crime, and the other side believes that it doesn't, that there is no proof that capital punishment makes crime rates go down. Criminologists in the United States have found capital punishment has not proven to deter crime and homicide. There was a professor that published an article, Journal of Criminal Law and Criminology. He believes 80% of capital punishment has no effect in murder. In reality, the government is keeping its focus from the real crimes and the real crime problems. Each homicide is different in each state. The people that believe that there is no deterrent effect in the method, and some people believe that it is the worst type of punishment someone or a criminal can have. Going through the process of death penalty is really expensive. The case can be open for years. It involves judges, lawyers, police officers, any type of person that's, in the courtroom that has to do with the trial. A lot of people believe that the appeals take too long and is a waste of time, and that a penalty would be just faster and quicker, also cheaper. There's been a few instances that people have gone through the death penalty and were found innocent months or years later. So that's another reason why other people believe that it's inhumane, and the states that do have the death penalty shouldn't have it. Some people believe that there's no evidence that capital punishment deters crime, and there's also no source that capital punishment decreases the rate of homicide. The National Academy of Science believes the discussion of deterrence should be taken out of capital punishment because, like I said, there's no evidence that proves it deters crime. The United States can't agree or disagree if a state can or can't have the capital punishment. It's up to the state to decide. Only 16 states don't have the death penalty. There has been a few states that had the death penalty and they took it out. New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, and Illinois were the 5 states. There's also a lot of states that have the death penalty but don't use it or haven't used it in decades, and keep hundreds of prisoners behind bars for over 15 years, and that's the average time that they're in prison before execution, if they get executed. And it's rare when someone does. The states that don't have the death penalty have thought of ways to have have thought of ways to have less violent to the criminals that are on death row and to help them get out of the death row. Or I mean the states that do have the death penalty. The states that don't have death penalty have become more democratic and humane and believe that the death penalty has become less necessary, should become less necessary to use. The United States helped reform the movement of capital punishment, so they don't really care to abolish it. The Supreme Court is the only type of court that can abolish capital punishment nationwide. They can declare it unconstitutional. It almost happened in 1972 in the case of Furman versus Georgia. It was said that the death penalty violated the constitutional guarantees of due process and equal punishment, equal protection, and prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment. So 35 states passed a new legislation to show capital punishment, new procedures, and safeguards against discrimination. A lot of Americans don't see capital punishment as cruel and unusual. Juveniles and mentally handicapped can't go through the death penalty, or they can't ever have it or get it. Also, the case Furman versus Georgia took out felony murder and rape as capital crimes. There are different statistics that show like each race, what percentage has capital punishment, or which one has gone through it more and which hasn't. 42% black, 56% white, and 14% Hispanics were under the sentence of death row, and only 2% were women. Since 2000, sex and race have been an issue on death row, has been an issue for prisoners on death row. Capital punishments. Inmates that were under capital punishments usually were on parole, probation. Some inmates had charges pending before getting on it. Each type of race has a different history. More black inmates had a felony conviction that was 73%, 64% were Hispanic, and 65% were white. In homicide conviction, 10% were black, 7% were Hispanic, and 9% were white. There was a higher percentage in Hispanics with capital offenses. Hispanics were 32%, blacks were 31%, and whites were 24%. The Eighth Amendment is a big issue also in capital punishment because it says nor cruel nor cruel and unusual punishments. So a lot of people believe the death penalty is a cruel and unusual punishment. The Eighth Amendment prohibits the federal government from inhumane penalties on criminal defendants. And I believe the most important part of the Eighth Amendment is cruel and unusual punishment. The amendment is supposed to protect Americans from harsh punishments. So that's the reason why death penalty is a hard subject to talk about with the Eighth Amendment. And a lot of people argue back and forth about it. The Supreme Court ruled that death penalty is not a violation of the Eighth Amendment. but it does keep juries from giving the death penalty against a person. They have to go through a whole trial before they decide. A lot of people believe that sympathy is used towards criminals because they don't suffer like the person they killed, murdered, raped, or like whatever they did to them. So the death penalty is not enough for them. That people believe they should suffer, and the lethal injection doesn't. A person doesn't feel it, so to a lot of people, there should be something more other than the lethal injection. Like some people, I was reading articles, people still believe that the electric chair should still be used for people that do awful things. So there has to be a good reason to use capital punishment, because if there's not a good reason, or not a good reason, but a reason to use it, it would be considered cruel and unusual punishment to me. I believe there's always going to be pros and cons to using the capital punishment. A lot of states will continue to use it, and there's always going to be arguments if it's cruel and unusual or if it deters crime. So it will continue to be an argument, and I believe it will still be used for a very, very long time.